to me, Ronnie Stanley, as if we're following the Patriots this week, right? Especially when they don't have any real pressing internal free agents. Like their biggest internal free agents are like John Jones, Austin Hooper. These are middle of the roster players.
Mm-hmm.
John Jones at this point obviously was a better player, a few years ago. But the big thing you're looking for, and by nature of this podcast, we'll get a resolution about 10 minutes after we're done recording. The big thing you're looking for the Patriots this week is, does Ronnie Stanley hit the open market, or do the Ravens let him go? You figure that, all right, you're going to keep Lamar Jackson's blindside protected. They're in a championship window. He's a preference, but they have 22 pending free agents, and they currently project to have $12 million in cap space. So somebody's going to get left on the outside looking in, right? And if even if they are trying to bring back Stanley, even if they make him a priority, that still might have to come with a hometown discount. And this is a guy that's 31 years old, right? Is entering the back portion of his career. Does he look at that and say, nope, this is my last chance to cash in, I'm taking it? If that's his mentality, I think you feel pretty good about the Patriots making a run. Now, they obviously have to put the money on the table, but they can put more money on the table than anybody. If he looks at it and says, I want a ring, I'm going to do what I need to do to stay in Baltimore and run this thing back, well, what can you do? But Ronnie Stanley, to me, is the biggest talking point right now because, Cam Robinson works for me as a bridge. You get into Dan Moore territory, I still think starting left tackle is a need. Like that guy, that's somebody who should be competing for a job at best. That's not somebody you're giving the job to. And we'll get to the left tackle situation in the draft, which obviously some big developments in that yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
But, what would be great about signing Ronnie Stanley to me, and Cam Robinson to a lesser extent, if you sign Ronnie Stanley, left tackle's no longer a need this offseason. Right tackle still is. And, he's 31, so in a year or two, that need's going to pop up again, hopefully in a stronger draft for the position.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't believe in Will Campbell, which we'll get to because there was some reporting on how the Patriots feel about him, but if you don't believe in Will Campbell or any of these other left tackles, you don't need to force it. You have Ronnie Stanley and you're sitting with him and you're in good shape, right? So to me, he's the most important player. With guys like Milton Williams, some of those other defensive front guys, some of those corner guys, that happens to line up with the strengths of this draft class. So I'm less worried there. They should sign more than one impact player, but being able to sign Ronnie Stanley tremendously changes, to me, the outcome of their offseason, the picture of their offseason.
Well, yeah, you just said it. Like the draft part, like I feel like we got to wait and see on the Will Campbell thing, like whether he's even like really a need, how big of a need tackle is right, based on what they do in free agency. And like, I just think it's risky. I wouldn't want them to sort of zero in on Ronnie Stanley when it's a guy you don't even know if he's actually going to even hit the open market. And I look at Ronnie Stanley, like I'm not going to tell him what he should do because I don't know what his priorities are right now. But if he said like, this is my last big payday, I got to go get wherever I go to the highest bidder, wouldn't blame him at all.
No,
but the Patriots would have to be that team. Do I trust them to be that team? Not necessarily. And
they can be is the point.
They can be.
They have the resources to be.
They have the resources to do it. They have the ability to do it. Will they do it? That's the real question. And there's another part of this with the Ravens, Barth, is that Patrick McCarry, their guard, he's also a free agent, also mentioned as a name to watch for the Patriots, which I found interesting. Yeah. I don't know. I think it's too far to say that they're sort of set at guard, but like if they made a big free agent signing for a starting guard, that would be a little surprising to me. I thought maybe they'd bring in a guy, like you said, that could compete for a job at guard.
That's one for me. Like we had talked about this with Trey Smith, who now is expected to get franchise tags, so it changes the conversation there. But it's like, if you sign Ronnie Stanley, if you just want to recreate the left side of the Ravens offensive line and sign, Stanley and McCarry,
I'd be okay with that.
That'd be great.
Can they get Derrick Henry too?
If McCarry's like your Mike Vrabel has the connection. If McCarry's
there you go.
If McCarry's like your second, your third biggest signing, I think he makes a lot of sense. If you're coming away from the offseason saying we got Patrick McCarry and that's your headline, I don't think that's enough. No. I'm not against them signing a left guard. Layden Robinson struggled last year. We still don't know exactly what position Cole Strange plays.
What is City So?
Right. City So he's not a bad option to have as depth. I don't know that he's a guy you want starting week one. But I think he was better than what they had last year, but that's not saying much. So,
but Owenu, I feel like the guys will agree that he's going to be right guard.
Right guard, they're set, and he should not be playing tackle. Like the two positions I know are David Andrews at center and Mike Onwenu at right guard.
Mm-hmm.
It's the other 3 spots that they need to fill, and how they do that is what we'll see. But to me, those other 3 spots are all up for grabs. I don't think Caden Wallace, although he did show a couple flashes last year, I don't think he prevents you from adding a right tackle. You can get better, especially in free agency, if you get somebody who's a more proven commodity. Left guard, just talked about Lane Robinson, Cole Strange, and obviously left tackle, they need to upgrade over Vidarian Lowe and not bring in somebody to compete with him, but somebody who will be the clear-cut starter.
Sure. Well, you think Dan Moore would be like competing with Vidarian Lowe? I thought he would. I don't think he's like a great. I think he'd be, an average.
No, but he's still somebody where, like, if they sign Ronnie Stanley, right? I'm good.
That's good. They have solved the problem for at least 1 or 2 years.
Vidarian Lowe's your backup. I'm all set. Like, perfect. Rolling. If it's Dan Moore, now I'm like, I'm not taking Will Campbell or Kelvin Banks or any of these guys at the top of the draft, but do I look at a guy like Anthony Belton who could play on the left side on day 2? Somebody like that, maybe early day 3. I liked some of the testing. I think the tackles helped themselves yesterday. I'm surprised you don't want to do a full hour on Holland Pierce from Rutgers. But like,
I texted you back one word.
Yeah, we'll get to Holland Pierce, but I would still be like, all right, well, can you get like a guy in the top 100, a rookie to come in and compete with Moore and Lowe? And like, there's a chance that maybe that guy, if you develop him right, can win out for that job. If it's Ronnie Stanley, I don't think you need to do that.
Yeah, no, look, Ronnie Stanley feels like he's sort of turning into like a linchpin for the whole thing, where like if they do sign him, everything else can sort of fall into place easier. If they don't sign him, it becomes a little scrambly as far as how they fill that position.
It gets a lot more murky, I would say, at left tackle. But you know what? Based on the reporting, doesn't it seem like they kind of feel that way, at least to an extent? That like Ronnie Stanley, he's mentioned in both pieces. He's mentioned early. You hear other people talking about him. Like, doesn't it kind of feel like he's their top priority if we're reading the tea leaves?
I think so. Yeah. Like that's what Phil Perry said, like I said earlier, and he's among their top targets, I think is how the Herald put it. And so we got to see if he actually hits the open market. Right. But I wonder how interested the Ravens are in re-signing him or like giving him a long-term deal. Maybe it's the term. That's sort of the question with Ronnie Stanley, but yeah, Stanley is a guy that I would absolutely take. And even if they had to give him like a 4-year deal and like you're paying him as a 34, 35-year-old left tackle, he's overpaid by the end of that deal, I'm okay with it. We're at the point where like we need to get real talent at that spot. Especially, I've been saying left tackle over and over again, so I'm not going to turn my nose up at Ronnie Stanley at this point.
Right, and it's also a 4-year deal in the NFL. We know what that means. It's
2, maybe 2 years,
3, right?
2 years, then we'll see.
You can front load it, and again, for a guy that's trying to get paid, if that's his motivation, he's not going to mind. As long as the money's there, I don't think he's going to care a ton. If he gets it up, he'd probably rather have it up front, right, than on the back end. So it would make sense for him for them.
And the other thing is, like, if he wants to win a Super Bowl, like, what are his options really? Like, if he doesn't stay with the Ravens, what Super Bowl caliber team needs a starting left tackle? The Chiefs would. Do you think the Chiefs would do that?
I don't know what their financial situation is, but if he wants to win, I think he stays in Baltimore because it's where he's familiar. If he's not going to chase the bag to another contender, that just doesn't make a lot of sense.
That's sort of what I'm saying.
Because those teams don't usually have the money to pay those guys.
Right. They usually don't have the money or they don't have the spot for the guy. And like, yeah, I guess the Chiefs could plug him in there, but like, is that worth it where like he would leave the Ravens for that? I don't see that as being worth it for him. I think it's either stay with the Ravens or go to the highest bidder. Those are basically his 2 choices.